All right, if you are new to tier list for the community tier list, this is a full community tier list based on votes. We are going to go over the different roles each characters play in a team composition and rate them based on the roles that they provide, as well as how free-to-play friendly they are for people with the new Inazuma stuff. And this is very important. If you don't know what each of the roles are, please watch the intro section over here. I'm going to be going over each of the roles and explaining them to you guys in full detail. Let's jump into it. On the rating scale here. So the rating scale for this is going to be based upon Spiral Abyss. And the reason we're going to be basing everything on Spiral Abyss is because it is the true metric of how you can do difficult content against Genshin Impact, and there's not much other difficult content. Now, to go over the definitions here, very simply, a sub BPS character is any character that's going to optimize off-field damage. As in, a perfect example of this, of course, is Zhang Ling, where she pops her Global Bear and her ultimate ability, and then leaves the field and has other characters deal damage while she's on the field. That is what these characters are. Main DPS characters, however, in contrast, are the characters that are going to stay out the entire time spamming normal and charge attacks. Example of that kind of character would be Ganyu, character that comes out on the field and uses charge attacks pretty much uniquely as the primary source of their damage. Those are main DPS characters. Now, supporting characters, these characters are specifically for shielders, healers, taunters, and damage boosters. That is the criteria we're going to be going over. It's also going to include shredding for like Viridescent, etc. So any type of support is going to be those types of things. They're not sub DPS. So for example, Xinku's supporting capability is going to be for his heal potential, not for his sub DPS potential on his ultimate. So if you're looking to see what the differences between the characters are, just know that that is the difference. Sub DPS is his damage, whereas supporting capability is his heal potential on his elemental skill. The last category on here is a character free-to-play friendly. A free-to-play friendly character is a character that does not require 5-star weapons or any constellations. Now, that's going to be true for both 4-star characters and 5-star characters. So does a 4-star character need constellations to be good, or does a 5-star constellation to be good? So for this vote, the way we do all the votes and do all the votes here is we're going to take a giant vote window. This chat will then vote upon what they find the character to be rated on that particular category. So Diluc as a sub DPS, and we're going to be taking a wide variety of votes for a bunch of different characters. And we have a list of characters that will be reworking this video and all the new characters that came out since 1.5. Now, every time we do these tier lists, we have thousands of people that come by the stream, but of course, only a couple hundred people vote at a time per character based on what they want to see. And a lot of people just want to lurk and check out unless they want to say that something's completely different and vote more. So this particular round, of course, Diluc is going to move down to the B tier, as you can see here, and every vote we're going to be doing is meaning an aggregate weight, not a majority vote. So for example, if there was like 50% between A tier and B tier, but on this vote, there was a 20% of the vote on C tier, and it was a split even between A and B tier, then it would be a B tier vote. So we just do it slightly weighted so that the weighted vote will actually have the predominance there. All right, chat thinks I talk too much shit about Xiao, but this is what chat actually thinks of Xiao. I can see that a lot of people in this most recent Abyss don't like their Xiao as much. They don't feel like he's as powerful. I didn't say anything before this vote. I just literally said you decide. Okay. So for the tier list for Pyro Characters, we changed up a couple characters around the way, and a lot of them are going to be the same ratings as they were in 1.5 tiers. If you want to check that out, of course, link to that in the description below. Go check that out. It's going to have a lot of the similar rankings there, but of course, we did change some characters.
Hello, Seka. Rate me.
Be funny. Anyways, first up, we got Diluc. Diluc actually moved down a tier for sub DPS and main DPS. I believe a lot of this was influenced by Tenha's video of C6 Diluc getting slapped around by Yoimiya, so I totally understand that. Makes sense to me. Sub DPS potential was really high for some reason. I have no idea why, because of EQ combo, but it definitely fell down. I honestly feel like Diluc is definitely one of the weaker Pyro DPS, unfortunately. It's much stronger than Xinyan or Yanfei at times, but that can be arguable in certain team composition builds. Overall, he's not worse. I think the thing that Diluc needs the most is a better weapon, because he only has access to Wolf Gravestone and Skyward Pride, really, for weapons, and that's basically what his feeling is. If he gets a better weapon, we can bump him a tier potentially, but right now, he doesn't have good weapon access, so that just moves him down for overall damage. Next character on the list, we changed around Klee a bit. Klee moved up on the sub DPS category a little bit because of her potential for overall damage with elemental skill, and that mainly came in because of Kazuha's release. Now Kazuha can actually suck in all the bombs from Klee, making so that talent 9 you're doing over 900% damage to an enemy with your elemental skill. So that's a huge bump in damage for Klee, because before you could only get about maybe 600% damage or so because you drop a couple bombs along the elemental skill. So it's basically over a 50% bump increase for your elemental skill. So that makes a huge difference in her overall DPS. She did change the main DPS. We did a revote on this, but she did not change. Everyone voted for her S tier. They thought she was better than Diluc, and that's just how chat rolled out, because of course you can suck in the Klee bombs with Kazuha. Xinyan did see some changes in the support category and main DPS. She was all A tier last time around, and now has moved down straight across the board to B tier across the board. Now this is kind of due to the fact that physical DPS are really not that great in a lot of Abyss unless you're using a Eula composition, and physical DPS are just in general not super awesome right now. She's also not very free-to-play friendly, of course, so I'd say that Xinyan, in order to be good again, would probably just need a more physical-oriented meta, because she's kind of fallen by the wayside as far as characters that people choose to use in Abyss and other characters and teams. So I definitely agree with a lot of the rankings here and feel like she is kind of, you know, not the best to go for it. Hu Tao we talked about a bit, but really didn't change in sub DPS categories at all. We did talk about Yanfei a little bit, but there was not really anything in for sub DPS or possibilities to support capabilities to move her up, except for Tank Fei, and chat would not agree with my copium, so we didn't move on for Tank. So this is the Yoimiya main DPS vote, so you can see it. I know you got on YouTube are gonna want to know how close was it. It wasn't close. Next up, we got Yoimiya. Now, Yoimiya was a really controversial character on release, and of course, has the worst fucking ultimate in Genshin. Oh god, is it so bad. It's so bad. But everything else on her kit is amazing. She doesn't really provide super good support. She does provide a 20% attack bump. I personally feel like she would be ranked B tier as far as support capability because of her actual ability to boost her team by somewhere between 10 to 20% overall attack percentage. So I think that the chat was a little bit light on the vote here for her supporting capability. But as far as main DPS potential, she does have some of the highest auto attacks in Genshin Impact. So of course, her auto attacks are very ranked high. And of course, she has really, really high weapon access for Rust, the new craftable bow, etc. So there's tons of options for her, etc. So if you don't like Yoimiya, this is not telling you to pull for Yoimiya. This is just a ranking of the character based on objective analysis and people's salt. But the vote was pretty close, of course, and it did weight toward Yoimiya at the end of things. The other thing that changed on this vote, because Childe has more weapon access, we did change the free-to-play friendliness of Childe to move up a tier, because he does have access to the new bow, and that new bow is pretty decent for Childe for the new craftable bow. What's it called again, chat? The Hamayumi. And that bow is decent for Childe, not insane, but definitely helps with his viability a little bit. But most people feel like he needs a harp or the new 5-star craftable 5-star weapon to be really, really impactful. I personally think that he's really good for free-to-play players with a Rust Refine 1, even just to enable Zhangling as the DPS goes. And you don't really need a lot on him, but I definitely understand where people are coming from with the constellations, and I feel like he's kind of constellation gated as far as like C1, and that definitely makes sense to me, because your rotation is a little bit lighter without the constellation 1, and it's really hard to maintain the uptime for your ulti as well as your elemental skill. For revotes on characters for Cryo DPS, the only character we really revoted on this time around was Eula, and Eula, we actually moved her up tiers, of course, for sub DPS and support. The reason she moved up for sub DPS and support is because of her potential at C0 and C6 with the correct team compositions for quick swap Eula, for like coming onto the field, dropping your elemental skill, dropping an elemental burst, and another elemental skill, hold E. Her potential for damage is extremely good on quick swap. You can drop somewhere between 100 to 200,000 on a C0 Eula, and up to 500 to maybe even 600,000 on a quick swap Eula as well. And the battery potential for the character is really easy, because all you have to do is use Rosaria with a Favonius Lance to give her elemental to give her energy. So particle funneling is actually pretty simple for her rotations for sub DPS, and you don't actually have to use main DPS. And because she does have Cryo Shred as well as over 55% physical shred with Constellation 1 and 25% without Constellation 1, she is a a decent supporting option for boosting cryo and physical damage. Now for Ayaka. Ayaka was actually ranked pretty decently across the board for a sub DPS and main DPS character, as well as being free-to-play friendly. She has a lot of good weapon access for a lot of things, and of course her best free-to-play weapon is the Blackcliff sword, or the new craftable sword if you wanted to use that for an energy recharge build. She has a lot of options here, so she's extremely fun and very, very good in general. I agree with most of the rankings here. I did feel like chat was a little bit light on the support potential for the character because of how they undervalued Constellation 4, but I understand that a lot of chat was voting for Constellation 0 and some were voting for Constellation 6, depending on what they really feel based on the character. So of course the experiences for people are very different on this. If you were considering her at a Constellation 4 Ayaka, I would consider this A tier, and if you were considering this a Constellation 0 Ayaka, maybe C tier. So the ranking seems somewhat fair based on those two things. Okay. The next thing we did was for Keqing. Re-voted on this one, and as you can see, chat is still voting right now, but it is pretty split between S and A tier. So the ranking that we have now at the end is determined on this. Personally, what I think is that this character got a lot better with the Mist-Splitter and addition of Kazuha, but it's still Keqing. And I wanted to see if chat thought Keqing got any better. Keqing, as a main DPS, we wanted to talk about, and she was ranked A across the board beforehand, and actually remained at A, even with the Mist-Splitter being added and Kazuha being added for her overall damage increases. But no matter what we said here, chat was voting on A, but the vote was extremely close and was really interesting to see. As far as Razor goes, we also had a vote for Razor here, and Razor's vote was really, really close. I was very surprised to see how close that was, and it was a very interesting and eye-opening thing, so a lot of people are not as happy with Razor nowadays. All right, the closest vote we've had today is Razor main DPS, and people are not really happy with Razor in this current Abyss because he, of course, is Electro, and he's not really doing great, and he's suffering again in that content. And the next character we got, of course, is the Electro Traveler. Electro Traveler is a sub DPS as far as character that gives damage on off field, is pretty lackluster and doesn't really provide a ton of damage for overall damage increases for your team. But as a support, he does okay. He does provide some energy gains for your team. He does help you with a little bit of electro shred, etc. But he's okay. Definitely not S tier or anything crazy, but he's definitely a decent character as far as supports go. And of course, he's extremely free to play friendly because everybody gets him for free, and his weapon access is really easy to get because you have new craftable swords, Blackcliff swords, whatever you want. And there's a lot of options for him, so he's of course very free to play friendly. This time around, we did not vote on any Geo characters, so all the Geo characters remain exactly the same. There were no differences on Geo characters, so we left those all the same, and no one wanted to see anything different because they all agreed with the vote, the order we had everything here. But Anemo Characters had a crazy upset this time around. Now, Anemo Characters this time around were very interesting because we re-voted on Venti, and Venti was both S tier in sub DPS and support, but a lot of people are very, very upset with Venti right now because of how he's not able to group Samurai if you're not using a freeze composition. Now, I definitely understand that that is probably where people are as far as Venti goes, and it definitely makes sense to me that people are very upset with that. As far as his overall damage goes, he doesn't even hit all the time because when you use your elemental burst, sometimes the Samurai will dodge out of that, and of course they're not taking damage with that. And that seems very, very annoying for a lot of players, so I definitely can understand your feelings there. But if you're using a freeze comp with Ganyu, of course that's going to be an S tier composition, but the viability of Venti has definitely dropped a bit because of a lot of the new enemies in Genshin are not able to be grouped with Venti. And seeing how he doesn't provide a ton of damage overall because of that, I can definitely see where chat is coming from here. As far as supporting capabilities go, because of his grouping potential, of course that moved down a bit because of chat, and they feel like he's on the same par as Sucrose. But a lot of people think that as DPS goes, Sucrose is higher damage than Venti. And we actually did a re-vote on Sucrose to see what people thought versus supporting capabilities and sub DPS capabilities for Sucrose as well. And the vote actually remained the same for Sucrose, which is really interesting. So there was some salt there. As far as Xiao goes, here's the vote for Xiao. And this is where people are at. I thought this was the most interesting vote of the day. And Xiao was a very, very complex character for people to see. And of course, he's kind of sus right now in Abyss for some people, because he does not provide everything you could possibly want without certain other characters. So a lot of people are very, very salty. Of course, there's the Electro Shields, etc. So I definitely understand the salt. And of course, by character vote, the best character in Genshin is Kazuha. By a lot. Just by vote, he's the most free-to-play friendly. He's the best sub DPS, best support, best main DPS, and free-to-play friendly. We compare it to Zhongli. He's better than Zhongli, apparently, according to the main DPS chart. And if we go up to Bennett, it's better than Bennett. So, arguably, Kazuha is the best character in Genshin. By community vote. Okay. I mean, I honestly put him at the same ranking as Venti, as Zhongli and Bennett, but you know, as far as characters, it was pretty good. And the other character people kept rating in the same is Jean, of course. And no one ever wants to talk shit about Jean anymore because how good she is. You can still do tons of damage with Jean with fall damage procs early on with the Mirror Maidens, even with the millions of HP there. There's plenty of strategy that allow to do that. And people are doing like 500,000 damage with Jean, with sub DPS Jean in under a few seconds if you do it right. But you can definitely see some progress there for Jean. So she's still holding her own. The next character, or the last character on the list, of course, is Sayu. And Sayu is a very interesting character. We were looking at her multipliers for Sayu. Sayu is actually very poor on multipliers for her damage. And not the best overall there. She can utilize support and her staple supporting capability for healing and boosting damage is okay. But her damage is kind of... yeah, it's okay, I guess. And I even gave chat on the main DPS potential for Sayu. You could stay out on your elemental skill and roly-poly spam the entire time and use that as the main DPS potential. But a lot of people did not feel like that was the way, and they did not like Sayu as a main DPS. But they did find her very free-to-play friendly, and she is okay, otherwise it was a supporting character. So there's that. But that's gonna do for this video. This was an interesting tier list, to say the least. It was probably the most controversial tier list that we've ever done, and a lot of people had a lot of very tenuous votes and very big stress going on in the community. So no matter how you do in Genshin Impact, play who you like, have a good time, doesn't really matter. But this is where everybody voted on everything. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, of course let me know, because I know I'm gonna dislike bomb like crazy. Have a great day, guys. Peace.